Hello, this is Robin, and I'm going to talk about this 15mm scale layout which I've got here in front of me. I use it for my Grunts war game, and it's been around a few shows over the years. I think it's about 4 years old now as a terrain piece, but it's still going strong. It's a large, big 3 foot by 3 foot chunk of MDF, which I've put a sort of border edge around and then textured up. But in the middle of here it's that foam core, the yellow or pink, I can't remember which colour it is, foam, which creates the main base, and then the texture and the sand is completed on top of it. These pieces, these kind of Mesa style, kind of worn out, weathered looking terrain areas, are resin, and they were from a company called Critical Mass Games. So a big shout out to Craig who made these. Critical Mass Games as a company is sadly no more, but their models live on at Railpatha Europe, who bought the line off them for the Critical Mass 15mm models. I'm not sure they do these still. They're very, very heavy. These are solid resin chunks, and there's sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so, 7, 8 pieces I think on here which I've used. The idea being, because it's a small 3 foot by 3 foot board, I wanted to make sure models had, sort of easy cover so they can sort of duck behind things and get out of the way. Because when you're in a small environment you don't want it all just open ground, otherwise you'd be shooting each other instantly. So that was the idea anyway, was to give some cover, provide cover on the board. And also 3 foot by 3 foot was a handy show board game because I could take it to salute, drop it on a table and be ready to play relatively easily, with the 3 foot meaning it can fit into the boot of a car most of the time. It's kind of a consideration you don't often have, really, is it? That you're building terrain and you think to yourself, will it fit in the car? Because it's not the sort of thing you'd normally need as portable. You'd kind of store it somewhere in your garage or in your spare room and then whip it out occasionally for a game, not take it on a road trip. But since I was developing the Grunts game and I was out and about a lot at shows up and down the country, I went for something that was relatively portable. It still broke my back because this is heavy and those resin pieces in there with a big heavy MDF underneath make it a very heavy but small board. So it's weathering well. I can see areas like on top of this rocky outcrop. It's probably not visible on the camera, but it's been scratched at some point in transit and the paint's wearing off. I can see the creamy colour of the resin terrain coming through, but because it's a creamy resin, it's not very visible. In fact, most people would have difficulty spotting that probably if you were just having a quick butcher's. And I think something that's worth noting, I've got one of the Games Workshop terrain plastic pieces on there, and the reason for that is I wanted it as a sort of a space base. In fact, I've glued this on. It doesn't come off. It's partly mounted on some of the resin terrain here on both sides, and then underneath I've got sort of little stilt leg things, construction legs that are sort of holding it upright from bending on this side too. My most disappointing thing about when I built this really was this stream. I sort of cut the whole board in two with it, and I've textured it and I've put some that sort of liquid water realistic effects in there, and it just looks a bit naff really. It looks okay, it does add to the board, and the darker areas around here look sort of boggy and interesting, but overall I was a bit disappointed and probably didn't need to add this stream. At a later date, if I did a recovery on it, I might put some static grass tight up around the edge there to make it look like the grass is feeding off that stream. It might make it look more blended in, but I think I had that plan originally, but didn't finish. In a rush for doing a show game, you quite often miss on some of the final details that you thought you really were going to do, but that static grass, that might help along the edge of this stream actually. When am I going to do that? I've got so many other projects to do anyway, but there you go. So back to the kind of subject matter at hand, and that's the fact that this train could be used for 15mm or 28. And actually I could argue that you could use it for 6mm as well, although this platform then gets very large in 6mm scale, and probably some areas of it don't look quite right, but you could probably cover it up enough, have some smaller 6mm sort of landing ships and drop ships on here, and it would be nicely disguised, I think. But so starting out with a 28mm, so this is a tail ship and I used it for 15mm, but yeah, I don't actually own any other tail models, so it's just this. I always point this out when I show this. If you get one of these, any of these tail models where they have the tiny little prong things, make sure you magnetise them, because you stick it in there and instead of breaking off, the magnet just clicks it back on, so it saves your skin. You don't end up losing these little prong things. There's a small train spotter-ish tip there, but anyway, back to the scale thing. So these are some Forge World guys, and you can see they fit nicely on the edge there, ideal around the various different train sections. So if I zoom in a little bit more there, you can see that they can gain cover from a variety of different positions on the back. They can use the ramp okay, and just sort of fit in alright with that terrain layout. So if I remove this tail craft, I'll put some more of the sort of 28mm or heroic scale Games Workshop models on here as well, and the result is quite a nice layout for them. And if I zoom back and get the rest of the train, yeah, again, some good potential for even sort of clambering around these mesa rocks and letting a shot off from cover, and using the train, even though it's 3 foot by 3 foot in size. You've got plenty of scope for a small battle on here when you've got enough of the cover to get around. And just a sort of point of order actually in terms of painting and things, I used a sort of dark red colour on here and a dusty sort of grey with very little metallic, just because I wanted it to look more neutral. And I also used some sort of oil spill stuff on there to make it look used, and on these edges on here there's a lot of oil too, which is from a company called Life Colour. They do a range of different oil spills and various different things that weather the board nicely. So it ends up looking more neutral, and you don't want something like this sort of sticking out massively, but so it looks okay, dusty, without overemphasising the sort of Imperial eagle on there. So yeah, so if I switch now to sort of the smaller scale, 15mm scale models, and put maybe a bit more terrain on there as well, whip these guys off there completely. You know, I can put a sort of drop ship on there, which is a Ground Zero Games drop ship. I think it's called a Roach. Yeah, so that's a Roach, Ground Zero Games. This is a critical mass sort of grav tank, and well, actually it's a APC. I believe it's an APC, or is it the one that doesn't have the doors? Not sure it's got the doors. I think this is meant to be one of their sort of railgun tanks. And yeah, so some of these smaller 15mm scale models. Zoom in a bit. And you can see that they look... Oh look! R2-D2, may the 4th be with you. And some assaulting guys there. Yeah, that's a Ground Zero Games droid that they did, which just so happens to look kind of R2-D2 style. I not typically leave it dotted around the board somewhere for a laugh. And these droids, hunter-killer droids, are also very familiar looking, as in they look a bit sort of Empire, don't they? But I use those as sort of droids to sort of fly with my grunts units when I use them in the game for grunts. So there you go, looking perfect for the sort of 15mm scale as well, really. I mean, I know the lights and things on here are a bit out of scale, but they could be larger bulkhead lights. And if I now pop a few more bits of terrain up, And you start to sort of put some of this, oh, it's a bit dusty over there. Zoom out so you can see what's going on. Yes, start to put down some different industrial looking terrain, more cover again for 15mm. And these guys, these were Kato. They're sort of pylons from Kato. So a little mounted area like that. Again, you could put a crew or something in there, or a geyser. And with a 15mm scale, you've got the scope to put smaller pieces of terrain together like that and get away with it. I mean, arguably you could have that. It's not going to work as an outpost, is it, for a Space Marine? Looks a bit lonely up there on his own. Yeah, that doesn't quite work. But the rest of this terrain you can get away with for multiple scale again. It's hiding behind the wall there. Another sort of section of terrain. So again, for 15mm, the more you can sort of industrial up an area to give cover, the better and more fun the game can be by giving you opportunities to hide squads behind different areas. So there we go. The problem with these speeder bikes, these smaller ones, on a board that's only the sort of 3 foot by 3 foot. Here's the guy. It's from Ground Zero Games. So yeah, you can probably tell I mostly use this for 15mm, and that's where what I'm mostly excited about. But I do like using it for the smaller scale as well. I mean the bigger scale. But I do like using it for the bigger scale 28mm games as well. So there we are. There's me back again. Actually, one thing I didn't put on is my Imperator Mecha, which is one of the models that I had produced. I'm hoping to go back into production again with Brigade models soon. But I had that produced for grunts. I will give you a quick close-up on that just before I sign off. So here we go. This is one I painted myself, and I wanted to go for a sort of a white and red city sort of style look to it. You can see the size. I'll put a Games Workshop model so you can sort of see that. So there we go, a general overview of this terrain layout and how I use it in games, and how you can generally build some decent terrain that will work multi-scale if you like, without too much in terms of adjustment. Just pop on some different drop-on terrain and it can start looking 15mm compared to 28. So thanks for listening in, speak to you again soon, bye!